All right, it is 5:40, October 22nd. The Park Authority meeting is adjourned. I'm not seeing anybody. Not adjourned. Wow.
Okay.
Wishful. Maybe in 2 hours or so. Is in session. I don't see anybody online right now. So we can go right into the committee meeting. Abner, you're up first.
Thank you. So I'd like to call the Strategic Planning and Initiatives Committee to order and hand it over to Torsia and
Nick.
Dave.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Torsha Bhattacharya, Stewardship and Planning Division Director. And today with me, I have Nick Kuhn from Kimley Horn. So we are going to talk about the second part of the needs assessment today. Next slide. So if you remember, we brought to you the results of the first part of the public outreach surveys that we did, the focus groups, the data that we collected from that, and presented that to the board early September. I came back in early October to talk about the needs assessment, how it fits into the upcoming strategic planning efforts, and then the master planning efforts too. So today we are going to follow up on that first part and cover a majority of the analysis that happened. Next slide. And so we are working to develop the analysis and then put all of these analysis together in the form of the final report. Once that is done, we intend to come back to the board to present that in the report format in early next year. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Nick.
So we're going to go through about 8 or 9 slides here that have a lot of content on them. We're going to go through a couple sort of base information items and then build up into a couple peer comparisons and then also some level of service discussion. So we'll go through those. The first item we wanted to talk about was demographic trends. This is one area that we looked at in terms of projections, not only what has happened since the last needs assessment or the last 10 years, but what will be happening over the next 5 and then even more years ahead of us. And so some of the trends that we wanted to touch on were the continuation of growth within the county, and particularly the urbanization of the county. The growth that is projected ahead will continue to have more of an urban development pattern to it. And that brings different kind of lifestyle needs when it comes to recreation. That's one key area to influence and the types of facilities that urban lifestyle recreation needs. Tighter footprints, smaller facilities in terms of those needs. We've also had a unique dynamic that has unfolded over the last few decades when it comes to age across the county. So many of our facilities, say 40 or 50 years ago, were perhaps built for an age demographics that was much younger. In fact, in 1970, 42% of the population was under the age of 19. But today, about 26%. And that will continue to decrease in the projections going forward. Now, the flip side of that is our over 55 population. That has grown from 8% in 1970 to now today at 24%. And that will continue to grow towards close to 30% in the next few decades. So that is quite a dynamic change in terms of what the facilities are serving and serving the older senior and active adult populations, but there's still a need for youth and young adult oriented facilities. And another important part is the diversity of cultures within the county. This is again a trend since 2000. Our Asian and Pacific Islander and Hispanic and Latino populations have actually increased by 50%. And that continues, and there's a lot of diversity within those groups as well. And that is an important aspect. The diversity of programming, the events, and the facilities require that flexibility of what we look at towards the future. Now, another important aspect here is looking at trends overall. And so we look at this in 2 different lenses, local trends as well as national trends. We'll first talk about local. This is where, again, that within the peer agencies around Northern Virginia and DC areas are really focusing on an urban and tactical parks. These are small footprints and very strategic approaches in terms of addressing industrial sites, streets, vacant lots, and really looking at high-performing park spaces within those. Adapting facilities. This is, again, how we can fit within smaller footprints in some of those urban areas. Mini pitches, pickleball hubs, and converting facilities to have multiple uses. And also diversifying recreation. We've seen, again, the balancing of traditional sports and athletics and recreations with emerging activities, futsal, trail running, 5-on-5. Those are, again, some of those trends. But we also look at those participation rates that have happened within Fairfax County itself. And so you'll see on the bottom left are participation rates. Those percentages are above national averages. And you'll see a couple of unique items here. Tennis, for example, 40% participation here in Fairfax County above national averages. You also see a number of passive recreations, also weightlifting. So it's a mix of different types of activities that are unique to here to Fairfax County. Now, nationally, again, there are some trends that have been unfolding over the last few years, specifically since the pandemic, particularly growth in racket sports. Now, we've heard a lot about pickleball, but all racket sports have really been increasing significantly over the last few years. Youth and team sports. This is also an area that has a lot of recovery in the last few years. In fact, 20 of the 24 team sports for youth have seen growth in the last year alone. And outdoor and fitness demand. This has been a trend that has been for over the last decade, and that continues to grow in terms of hiking, trail running, yoga, those lifestyle and lifelong fitness and wellness type of activities.
Do you happen to know which 4 team sports didn't grow?
That's what I was going to. There's wrestling is an example of one that has declined, and then also hockey and some of the rink-related sports have been the ones that have actually declined.
How do those increases compare to median income?
They have been, some of the higher growth has been with the higher income households. That has had the highest level of increase in participation.
Yeah, because I'm looking at tennis, and tennis is not a grassroots kind of sport.
Well, and you'll see just below that in this
And none of
bottom.
those are.
That's right. The bottom right here is the top 5 participated sports in the United States now. And you'll see quite a mix, and it does hit on the aspects of household income, has some influence into those. So number 1 is basketball. Number 2 is golf. Number 3 is actually tennis. Number 4 now is pickleball. And then number 5 is golf venues. Think of Topgolf, those types of facilities. So you can see some influences of how that has really changed in the last 5 to 10 years in terms of those national trends.
2 and 5 fully separate populations. So if you think of golf, that's really can't read numbers. 56 million people.
So golf is at 28 million regularly participate in golf.
47.
Yes.
So okay.
So printouts.
Should have better eyes than person.
Yeah.
So, but those are 2 different sets of people. Like, are we double counting? Or do you not know?
Well, in regard, there is some overlap certainly between golf and you're talking about golf and golf
Golf
venues.
venue,
Yeah, certainly, but different types of facilities associated with those types of activities.
Sure, people who play golf play tennis too. So.
Yeah, but it's, I mean, if you're gonna split them out, I'm just curious.
I think the space planning requirement is slightly different,
Yes.
as well as the people who are interested in golf versus, it's like Topgolf might be different.
And I think, one of the key things is we've probably traditionally have thought of as number 2, 1, 2, and 3 in terms of basketball, golf, and tennis. But seeing pickleball and golf venues in those top 5 most participated sports now is something that's really unique and was not the case 5 to 10 years ago. So I wanted to talk a little bit about peers as well. So there's 3 slides here on peers and research into peer agencies that we wanted to dive into. But first, let's talk a little bit about how the peers were selected for this case, this kind of deep dive. And so on the left side here is the criteria that we had in terms of identifying peers within this. And so it's quite rigorous in terms of the level, the population of the jurisdictions, their geography, in terms of size, density of the population, as well as proximity to a core city, number of parks, acreage within their systems, policies and frameworks, as well as CAPRA accreditation and gold medal winning agencies, so high performing agencies. And so the peers that were identified within that are just below that list on the left side there. And those consist of Gwinnett County, Georgia, Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, Montgomery County, Maryland, Prince George's County, and Prince William County. And there's a range across there. Now within that, Fairfax is the largest and densest of those counties. Within that, we also are leading in terms of the acreage level of service. We have in the middle there is a comparison, a side-by-side comparison with Fairfax County on the left and peers and NRPA medians on the right side. And that hits on a couple of different factors. Top is acres per thousand populations. And this is taking what the park authority is providing. And this is the best way to try to hone this into an apples to apples comparison. This is a very hard aspect to do in terms of peer comparisons because many agencies have lots of acreage, and we'll talk about that in a second. But this is for peers, we're looking at the acreage that is maintained by those peers, not other providers within the jurisdictions. So we're currently providing 2/3 of the comparable acres as our peers, but we're also exceeding national medians by double. So that's a mixed story of how we're looking at that and why we look at both national and peer benchmarks for those.
Who are, can you tell us the peers real quick, just so we know?
Bottom, yeah, bottom.
No, but the percentage of them, like who's the 10 and who's the 31?
So 31.4 is the peer average, and then the 10.2 acres is the NRPA national median. It's a side by side, so it's two different numbers there.
Okay. I'm sorry, I misunderstood it. I thought that was a range of our peers, but it's not. Our peers are 31 at natural average.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes, but the number on the left is average, the number on the right is median.
correct. Yes. So the numbers on that center column there, the number on the left is the average for the peers. The number on the right is the national median for NRPA for 2025. And so you'll see that for the acres on top, in the middle are staffing levels. And you can see we currently, Fairfax County Park Authority has 5.3 full-time equivalent positions per 10,000 population. That's compared to 8.5 for peers and 8.6 as a national median. So again, we're about 2/3 of the national and peer averages in terms of our staffing, meaning we're asking a lot. We have a large system and we're really asking a lot of staffing to do more with less than our peers and national median. And we're also performing very well in terms of expenditures and revenues. Now, expenditures were below median in terms of peers on a per acre basis, but we're in a per capita basis, but we have revenues that are higher. So we're actually being very well in terms of that cost recovery overall in comparison. And that's another very difficult one because of how different agencies are classifying their costs. So that's a very difficult one to have an apples to apples comparison to. We're also looking at on a per acre basis, the very last measurement. So about 4,000 per acre is our expenditures versus 5,400 on a peer average and 8,500 on a national median. So we are spending less, but making more with that investment. So that return on investment is very, very high.
I'm sorry. Interrupting. Per capita is what now?
Is a per person expenditure. So
Okay.
we're currently $80.94 per capita is your expenditures. That's operational dollars associated
So
with
capita, it just translates directly to person.
Yes.
Per person.
per person.
Total dollars divided by total population.
Yes.
So I would say if we're gonna take this to the public or whatever, maybe we replace calendar with personal. Just so
Okay.
it's people like. don't get confused.
That's fine.
Is this possible? I'll tell you, you have everything else has a connection except revenue. In other words, that you have here's what we're doing, but you don't have the revenue lines like the other ones. It's
Okay.
possible to see those numbers at some point.
Yes, yeah,
We'll add those.
yes, like this.
Good slide, though.
Since we're continuing this slide, I do think it's important because they measure different things. Peers are average and RPA is median. I think that's important to say. The other thing, and Tim asked me, I think it's general fund, but that's what we're comparing here. Revenue fund is not in any of these per capita or, okay, this is just the general fund portion of things. Okay.
Another thing to point out for this slide, for the revenues are more than 2.5 times the peers. We know we're different when we do revenue. So when you're looking at revenue everywhere else in the country, they're not calculating the toilet paper and the electricity like we're calculating. So if we were to do like our, I don't know which one, not our gross, but if we were to look at actually how much we came in and took out all of the indirect costs, our numbers would be significantly higher than other people. But we're not comparing apples to apples there.
I thought I understood until I got.
So let's take Montgomery County for cost recovery. Cost recovery. So Montgomery County would count their revenue as being their 100% fee based, right? Until I got here, I thought that's what, but HR, staff, director, the division director, all of that is indirect costs are covered in the general fund. So they only consider in their revenue, they only have to recover when their cost recovery, their direct stuff, like their debt, so everything else is separate. So it's just a different calculation where we consider all of our indirect costs, which are like a third of our entire revenue fund. And so it's gonna come out to look like our revenues are lower or aren't, because it's cost recovery, or cost recovery, sorry, cost recovery.
But the first place I'm confused is, you said this is explicitly general fund.
Yes, she was
Not
talking about
revenue.
the second to last bullet, the revenues.
Yeah, which throws me off.
Sorry, there was the bullet. If we
Yeah,
wanna take
no,
that
no.
out,
No, what I'm trying to understand is, based on what you did, do our peers have the equivalent of a revenue fund? Or is it everything is one bucket?
some of them do, some of them don't.
It varies.
It's highly variable.
Because based on what you said, your explanation after understanding general fund and revenue fund are separated here, that we're looking at general fund. Then it doesn't really tell the whole story on the services we're providing, the number of staff we have, all those issues are thrown off.
Well,
We don't
except that
have-
we're comparing our general fund to their version of the general. fund.
Except some of them don't have.
No.
But how they calculate that?
There's probably too much information on this slide if we really get into it. And the fourth bullet on the right, I think is conflating things
Yes.
because you're talking about revenue where nowhere else on this slide talks about revenue. So ignore that fourth bullet for 10 seconds. And everything on here is comparing our general fund to their general fund.
Even in the cases where
What they call general fund.
peers don't have separated funds. They said some of our peers don't have separate.
Because it's all general fund. There's no revenue that's.
So Mike, so I think what you're asking, just to make sure, what you're asking is we're not including in here recreation. Because recreation is in our revenue fund, but Prince George's County, their recreation is in their general fund.
Right.
And so if we're looking at the costs and are theirs artificially slightly higher because they're including what we would include in the revenue? Is that what you're
Right.
asking?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer. I
That's what I'm
just
asking.
clarify the question. Julianne?
I can't recall. It's just across those peers, it is highly variable how each one
No,
is going to.
I think there's an exercise there. It's only 5 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them of separating out by division. I mean, I think that we could, with the piece of paper, figure out how to get there.
Yeah, I just don't-
Because we should make sure that what we're comparing
Yes.
is as similar as it can be, and we are not,
It's not a hard exercise.
if we're only talking about our non-recreation stuff,
Right.
that's probably what we should be looking at. Other people? 'Cause
And
other
that
people-
figure was golf isn't under any place else.
From
Yeah,
this county.
that-
Oh,
No,
okay.
it's, we can, and I can take that on to help out with phone calls. I mean, we're the only ones, that golf wouldn't exist, but we could just take it out and create a budget based on the,
Right, because
yeah.
the other piece to that is on NRPA, if 8.6 full-time equivalent is inclusive of recreation around the country, and we're saying we're at 5.32 and therefore below, but they've included recreation and we haven't. That just, those kinds of things throw off the numbers, and if somebody digs in,
Yep.
will undermine what we're trying to do.
Yeah, we can do this.
And that brings to how the peer comparisons need to be just one part of the factor, because there are inconsistencies in being able to have the apples to
Right,
apples.
but even the NRPA piece, if they're including all the, if they're including recreation, so it's not just peer. I just want to make sure that we're actually comparing something similar versus finding out, oh, but they included all of this and therefore your numbers, your FTEs are much higher or something. I just want to.
And the easier way to do that is the reverse, not asking about what the rec stuff, because that's not really what we're talking about. Because our rec staff could be whatever we want it based on what you guys have the
Really?
stomach to increase fees for. It's really the natural resources and the maintenance. And so separating it out and saying, because I know NRPA does have data on maintenance across, they said it separated out. They do have data on conservation and natural resources. So we can look at conservation, natural resources, which is basically what our general fund is. And what did I say? Natural resources and operations, and then compare that to those 5 counties. I think that's the data.
Yeah, that may be, I just,
We'll go back, look at it and brush it up a little.
Jonah has her hand up and Dr. Carter's on as well.
All right, so let's read everybody in. Virginia law authorizes remote participation of board members, provided that a policy exists to ensure that such remote participation is consistently administered. This board has approved policy 111. Any such remote attendance must be approved by the board as long as the physical quorum of the board is actually present, which the remote participants are able to be heard by everyone in the room, and the remote participants comports with the policy. First step is verification that the remote participant's voice is clear, audible, and at appropriate volume for the meeting room and confirmation verification. Jonah, can you please state your name from where you are calling?
Jonah Toomey, I'm calling from my home in the Dranesville district.
Thank you. I move that Ms. Toomey's voice may be adequately heard from her location.
Tim Magnuson.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Dr. Carter, can you please state your name from where you are calling?
Yes, Cynthia Jacobs Carter, and I'm calling from my home in Franconia District.
Thank you. I move that Dr. Carter's voice may be adequately heard from her location.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And then pursuant to the Park Authority's policy 111 for remote participation in public meetings, that Dr. Carter and Ms. Toomey be permitted to participate remotely in this meeting because it comports with the policy we adopted in physical form is present here at the hearing building room 106, 107.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carried. Back to you guys.
Questions? So the last bullet. Now it's referencing both the medians for both. And yet you said one was
Still,
the.
Yeah, it's peer average and NRPA median.
Oh, okay.
The
Oh.
NRPA is a larger,
Yeah,
Sorry.
much larger pool.
so
Yeah.
having an average would distort the
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah.
So median was the better choice to go with.
I think we have a question on that.
Jonah has her.
John.
Are you guys ready for me? Sorry,
Yeah.
it's kind of breaking up. Okay, great. I just had a question. I think maybe Jay started talking about this, but in terms of, I think you were framing that we don't spend a lot and that our revenue is higher than our peers. But I'm just wondering, is that a good news story in terms of natural resource, the funds that we're investing in natural resources, tree maintenance, just maintenance across the board? Does that, or is that, so tell me how you view that statistic.
Are you asking about when I was talking about the revenue, comparing us to other, so there's 2 separate things, I think.
You were saying that we spend less per acre. So it says expenditures on the right.
Oh,
Expenditures
yes.
are below peers and
Yes.
NRPA median on per acre and per FTE ratio. So you were saying that's a good news. That means we're doing what we, we're being
no,
cost
don't.
I
effective.
don't think anybody said that was good news.
No, I'm saying
Okay,
that was, no, not at all. That is bad news. That's what we need to highlight and separate out and scream from the rooftops, is that number.
Just clarifying, because I think it might be helpful to look at the question of, And I've seen this stat before. I think you guys have had it on other slides, how much other, peer parks are spending on, tree maintenance. Or I know we have that set on that number on what we have in terms of deferred maintenance, that number that we have of thing, the estimate. Like if it would be possible to have their number on what their, I don't know if that's possible, but how much maintenance they're deferring, that may be kind of interesting.
We can, this was prior to you, we can forward the maintenance memo that had, I believe we broke it down, didn't we, Sarah? Did we break down the
Yes,
maintenance?
we did.
We broke down that for the surrounding jurisdictions. I think we had Mecklenburg County in there.
Yes.
In Montgomery County. I think Gwinnett might be the only one that we don't have in there. Yes, but we can probably get that.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Thanks.
All right.
So the peer comparison dove into a couple more topics. And so one of them was classifications for parks. And so one of the big takeaways from the dive and comparisons with the peer agencies is that many are taking an approach that is simpler is perhaps better. Whereas many agencies for a long time added lots of definitions and different classifications, many now in the last 5 to 10 years have actually dialed back on that and have reduced the number of classifications for parks, simplifying that process. And this is an example on the screen. The graphics here are actually Gwinnett County, who is probably taken it for the farthest end of that in terms of simplifying. They have one type of classification for parks. And what was that is it's located as just parks is a classification. But what it's drilled down to is the components that each park has. And that's what's exampled in the bottom image, is that each park has recreation amenities, resource areas, and trails to varying degrees based off where it falls within the urban transect, a context-sensitive approach to those parks. Now, they also do have an urban framework, and that is a very similar classification types here for Fairfax County. And so that alignment with the urban form is a very important key that many of these agencies, peer agencies, have taken on as well in really developing that definition of what those classification types are. But here, maintaining a dual framework. Many agencies have really dove down into the keeping the subtypes versus local versus countywide types of parks. And then also population serving parks versus resource-based, environmental or natural resource-based specifically. And really managing the differences across those for classifications as well as standards for level of service. That's a key aspect. Another element of the peer comparison was level of service. And so this was where many of the peers have moved beyond the simple acres per thousand metric. Many have adapted and continue. And Fairfax County has been incorporating that as well into the access, equity, and quality measurements as an expanded part of that level of service standard. And so one aspect is a tiered and contextual standard. What this means is having a tiered level of service that responds to rural, suburban, and urban conditions across the county. Many of the agencies have adopted this. In fact, the bottom right again illustrates Gwinnett County's approach that it has high urban high density, high medium density, medium low density, and low density standards across the county, as well as an access and acreage level of service built into those different tiers of population or the development pattern across the counties. Another aspect is incorporating equity overlays into that tier. So there's targeting areas that are of social economic risk and have additional equity goals or needs associated with those. And benchmarking to per capita ratios. This is another way to keep your level of service standards dynamic, moving with trends, moving with the development patterns for the community. And lastly, updating their standards in terms of quality and experience base. These are also, one aspect is adopting a service model approach. Again, illustrated on the top right here, how different facilities have different service models and incorporating that into the level of service standards. So today, our facility level service standards for the county have a per capita population base. for instance, a playground per 2,800 population base. Well, some have expanded that to the adapting that service model so that, say, recreation centers may be on a centralized or hub and spoke model, meaning fewer and larger distances across those, serving a larger population. Actually, having that is implemented as part of the standards versus, say, playgrounds that might be more activity-based. Or a local example here is the Wonder Wagon. That's one model of a amenity that is provided as a mobile service model. So there's lots of those different approaches that have been incorporated in terms of really drilling down and having that more contextualized standard.
So recommendations are those Kimberly.
So those are, yeah, through the assessment right now, yes.
So those are specific to us, even the things that you think we need to be doing.
So those are based off the peer comparisons right now. We're going to dive into little discussions on specific recommendations for Fairfax County here in just a little bit more. It'll get a little bit more detail here. Yeah. Excellent. So with that, the next 3 slides focus on level of service analysis. And this is where we'll start to drill down a little bit more context to Fairfax County. And so here we'll dive on a couple points. The first is our Fairfax County total acreage level of service, and that's the bar chart on the far left here. What you'll see here in the different line colors is the blue line indicates the park authority's acreage, and the gray line represents the total acreage of parkland within the county. And you can see how both have been decreasing in terms of that level of service with that additional population growth. And that trend is projected to continue. Currently, the overall county level of service is 39.4 acres per 1,000 population, of which the Park Authority provides 19.9 acres of that. Now, one of the dynamics that has happened since the last needs assessment is previously the Park Authority had 49% of that total acreage. That has now shifted to a majority. 51% of parkland is provided by the Park Authority. That's a shift in the last 10 years. Now, again, as we continue to grow, that is projected to decrease if additional acreage is not added.
I'm sorry. A million years ago, when I did my orientation, I was told that over 20% of Fairfax County was parks, state park, federal park, county, regional park, whatever. If what you're saying is that now 51% of the parkland in the county is owned by the Park Authority, has the 20% dropped? Because I had not heard that we had hit our 10% target.
It's just under 10% from what I understand. but
Which would imply that the shift doesn't come from us reaching some goal. It comes from a decrease in the total amount of Fairfax County that is a park.
It's possible the numbers you got in the presentation.
Yeah.
And
There is that.
And there's a difference of, and we'll talk about this in 2 slides with the access level service, is that the percentage of the geographical area of the county that is within Park Authority ownership or park land is different than a measurement of the level of service for acreage. So that the level of service measurement here of the acres per 1,000 is a ratio between that number of acreage per population. So that'll continue to decrease.
I understand population increases. If property doesn't increase dramatically with it, then you get a decrease in percentage. But it was we say the 51% of all the parkland was what keyed on my question is, are we that would seem to be, you're either federal parks are going to probably, is something shifting in that process, or are we gaining? For example, you said that 10 years ago, we were less than 50%. We either got over 50% by we accumulated so much property that we got up there, or somewhere in the county, we lost parkland. That wasn't ours, but belonged to somebody else.
Right, yeah, and that came through the addition of park acreage to the Park Authority.
Okay.
Is that causing that shift?
That the gray legend there, that's with or plus other public parks.
Yes, that is
It depends on other public parks. It's not that, it's the total of the two, not
It's-
just the others.
correct. And so that other providers, there's other public park providers consists of municipalities, regional park agencies, state and federal. So it's a mix of all other providing public parkland within the county.
Just to make sure I understand, it's two numbers that are very similar in percentage, that we now exceed 50% of the total parkland, correct, in the county, which is a different number than the 10%. We have not reached the 10% of
We don't know
parkland, which is our,
Total
which is our.
acreage.
Yeah,
Land.
And we gained on the other entities by acquisition.
Is that rate of keeping up with level of service something we can calculate with our peers to see if we're keeping up? And I'm thinking about how we would deal with the planning in the county and the growth in the county asking for parkland, for example.
so, and that's one of the first bullet here really starts to dive into what is the Park Authority's role in meeting that county standard? And that's what is really not defined, is how much is ultimately the Park Authority's responsibility of meeting that goal. And so that's where we recommend really that down and defining what the Park Authority can provide within that. So in some areas, and you'll see here in the third bullet here is the need for local parks. 213 acres of additional land for local parks. Now, what is the role of the park authorities in meeting that? Because there are other providers now in that category. In the middle graphic, you can see on the far right bar is the local parks, and the blue portion of that bar represents what the park authority is providing. 3.2 of the 4.8 acres is park authority, but 1.6 of that is also other providers. So you're the majority of the local park provider of that, but also not the only one providing it. And that's the one classification that we are not meeting the current standard for the county overall within that.
One of the things I think that this is going to be really useful for is going in when we go into the comp plan. Like when we're starting to review the comp plan, which soon we're going to be starting on the Park and Rec chapter or the recreation chapter, when we're talking about what the goal is, when we're trying to put it in there so that we have developer contributions, other things. It's really important to know it's not all us finding it in our CIP, but how are we sort of pushing to get these, if it's POPs, if it's, you know, whatever it is, like what is that, we still need these, Kyle was just whispering, like how much would it cost to acquire 213 acres of local parks? Like that's a lot of money. And we can't do it. It can't be just one person or one group sort of doing it. So having these data that we can then put in to make justification for making something, putting some things in the comp plan for pressuring to get more parkland, I think is really important.
Earlier, I think you said that when you were looking at the peers, we were the most densely populated.
Larger and denser.
Larger and more densely populated.
Yes.
It may be worth thinking about, although it's not included in your peer group, looking at more densely populated areas and how they dealt with it. In other words, we're on the cutting edge for our peers, but there are other kinds of government entities, cities, what a county, whatever, floating around that have dealt with this dense population issue. It may be worth looking at them. And to your point, I believe previously, and then you might remember, it was like we'd say, and I'm making up the number because I just don't remember it. It'd be like, we need 100 rectangular fields, but the park authority can do 20. And it was the county, you guys, that's all we can do. Unless you guys want to just give us a huge amount of money, we can meet this piece of it. And that's in other people have to either step up or do whatever kinds of approaches.
And the reality is everything conflicts with everything else, right? So there's X amount of time, and the point that we need to be making in the general plan or the comp plan is that we've got X amount of time. We don't have the next 100 years to acquire. There's only so much more time that there's greenfield, that there's land out there to take. Like after that, you're talking about, upping that, how much it costs to make 213 acres. You have to buy 213 acres with buildings on it, raise the buildings and build parks. That's where we're gonna be in the next 30, 40, 50 years. And so really saying, okay, well, what is the goal? What is a reasonable expectation with what's left? How much parks, how much should we bear? Then how much is it gonna cost to get there? So everything has to sort of be a reasonable way of going through that, because the same land the county is looking at for affordable housing, and the same land the county is looking at for more schools, and the same land is, like, how do we divvy up a rapidly shrinking pot? And the same thing is with fields and playgrounds and everything else. Like there's only X equals a fixed amount, and then we have to divvy it up by Y.
Which is why creative solutions like on top of parking lot, on top parking decks and buildings.
We'll expand on that here in just a little bit, but yeah, I think that's where one area in terms of that center bar chart is that, yes, local parks as a county, we're not quite hitting the standard overall, and that's across all providers chipping in. And so really drilling down to what the park authority's percentage of that is key for the future. Now, when it comes to district or county-wide parks, that middle part, you can see we're actually, the other providers are majority in terms of providing that. And overall, we're actually as a county exceeding our goal of 13 acres per thousand. We're at 13.4. But again, as we continue to grow, that will continue decreasing in that area. But we can actually, in the fourth bullet here, continue to build partnerships for those future acquisitions for the resource-based park. That doesn't necessarily have to fall, again, on just the park authority to accommodate for that growth. That's also, again, in this case, majority partnerships as well that are growing that. Facility level service is another level of service category here. And so we wanted to highlight a couple items here. Again, the overall theme between acres, the previous slide, and this is clarifying the role for the park authority. And so we have our county-wide standards from our comp plan, and that will be updated. And this is an opportunity to, again, clarify what portion of that or what percentage is the park authority's level on this. And so refining those elements, in one way to do this is developing and expanding those facilities level of service. And so the table in the middle here represents a few things. We have a long list of different facility types that are currently in the county standards for facilities. We've taken a collection of just a few here to highlight this. And so we have rectangle fields, diamond fields, playgrounds, and multi-use courts. And so next to that is a column that illustrates the number of those facilities that the park authority currently provides. Next to that are the number of other providers, other public facilities that are available in the county. And that includes school facilities at this time as well. So you can see the dynamics between those numbers. Now, in the middle, in the lighter blue column, are the current county standards for those. And you can see for rectangle fields, for example, is one field per 2,700. That is hard to defend in terms of where that number came from. And that's one aspect of, again, another question is, well, how much of that responsibility is the park authorities? And so what you'll see here is the number missing for diamond fields, as because currently we have several different sub-classifications for diamond fields. And a recommendation would be to consolidate that into one measurement for diamond fields for those.
Diamond fields are different size. I would
Yeah.
not be supportive of that. I'll say that right now.
They're, yeah.
There's two sizes. It's either a baseball field or a little league.
And
And softball. There's at least three. If you want to tell me, we can,
90
that's
foot
up to
and 60
three.
foot.
You can consolidate two adult and kids, I guess. The standards currently in place were around 8,000 and then around 20,000
And-
per, like one per. that.
And this goes off again, peer as well as national trends in this. And so NRPA has actually consolidated in the most recent year diamond fields to one classification type, facility type as well.
Doesn't mean they were right.
Well,
Real question. Isn't the outfield deeper in the softball fields?
Pardon?
Isn't the outfield deeper on a softball field than a little league field?
Yeah, there's basically two types, well, there's three types of fields.
There's
You've got
60 and
the
90
adult
foot,
softball
60 and 90
fields.
foot fields.
60, 90, and then you got the little league fields, which are 200-foot fences. And then you've got the adult fields. But the adult field play starts at 13.
But the adult softball,
Is
that
a
has
different
60
field.
foot bases, right? So that's what we're talking. about.
60,
So there's
65.
60.
60,
I know.
65 foot.
And how far is the fence on the softball field?
300 meters.
Same as the softball.
Well, he's probably looking at me like.
It's also worth noting that the rectangular field number is not truly accurate either, because that assumes all the rectangular fields are the same size, including like the elementary schools, some of which are max U10 fields, just because of the physical, like the amount of rectangular space that's there versus a full-size adult field. And so to a certain extent, for what it's worth, Kyle, we've already shoved everything together badly in rectangular fields and called them all equal.
So I will mea culpa and say that I believe I'm the one who condensed it, and I'll tell you the reason why. That's why Sarah's like staring at me. The reason, because this is a representative sample of things, and we originally had diamonds in all of the categories underneath it. So it made it seem like diamonds were this much.
Yeah.
And so we condensed it because this is not all of the categories.
Sure.
And so I think that when we look at the whole thing, all of those data are still there, but it seemed like we're focusing on diamonds only, which we are doing anyway right now. When we had the list with all of the different things, and it was like, why isn't basketball courts there? Why isn't all this stuff? So
Yeah.
mea culpa.
Well, apparently
Yeah.
basketball courts are not a facility type we have. We dump everything. in.
That's a
Yeah,
multi.
currently, everything is under multi-use courts. And so that's one of the recommendations is as those have continued, particularly racket courts have continued to have high levels of growth and participation, is that there's more and more conflicts of those multi-use facilities and more of a need for those single-use or designated courts. And so breaking those out into different measurements is key. Now, on the diamond fields topic, this is another area where many agencies have again adopted a more flexible approach to those types of facilities where use of synthetic turf as well as movable base allows for that, and movable fence lines
Right.
allows for a single field to be meeting the needs of 3 or 4 different types.
Assuming it's the biggest field.
Yes.
The problem is you can't think of all.
If you accommodate a bigger field, you get more different uses out of that. So that's then another area of that. And for some urban uses and situations, many peers have adopted that more flexible standard. for
But
those
that's
types
what
of
we,
fields.
and that's what we did at Patriot. Theoretically, there's mobile outfields and stuff. It's not easy.
There's all-
Not every field can do that, obviously.
There's-
But that's what I'm saying. That's what.
Jonah has that.
Just had a question. The Fairfax County facility standards. So do those take into consideration the distribution of population? You were mentioning earlier about how the population is growing older. I was just curious if, they're sort of looking at that as they set the facility standards.
It's
Part of the recommendation.
It
Yeah.
varies, but it also, they have separate standards for urban areas like Tyson's. So that's under the urban parks framework that we are going to talk a little bit about, but for the rest of the county, it's the usual, the one that's right there.
Yeah, outside the urban areas, it's one measurement type currently for everything, irrespective of whether it's in a rural or suburban area of the county within that. And that's where, again, that recommendation of having a tiered system. The columns in the dark blue represent one recommendation in terms of developing a dynamic benchmark standard as one way to tie this, again, to what the park authority could be responsible for in meeting, as well as helping track this in terms of the trends associated with this type of facility. So this is an example in the second to right column is a new type of ratio that takes the last 5 years of National Rack and Park Association medians for that facility types and averages that together. So it takes out the peaks and drops across from any specific year. But that, as you can see, next to the current standard for the county is quite different when you look at that. And these are for only agencies that are serving populations of over 500,000 as well. So the closest you can get to that data representing Fairfax County's jurisdiction as well. And so if you apply that to just the numbers that the Park Authority is providing in those units, that's that far right column. And that plus numbers represent the addition or above that benchmark. So in many cases, maybe you might be familiar with seeing those combined numbers to the overall county standards, suggesting dozens, if not hundreds of additional units of need for that facility. But if you look at that from a dynamic benchmarking of what the Park Authority is providing, it's actually above that benchmark. You're doing a great job at providing those. And you can see how that drills down to those different categories. And the last piece of that is updating the facility types. This is a great time, as the county is going to be updating the comprehensive plan, to modify those standards, whether that is inclusive of a dynamic benchmarking measurement for the Park Authority, but also just the types of facilities that are included in those standards can really be revamped. That has not been updated for over 15 years in that. And so there are some just recommendations on the far left side of some of those additional facilities that could be included, such as basketball courts, fitness zones, the indoor square footage, the rec centers, pickleball courts, splash pads, synthetic fields, and tennis courts, breaking out different measurements, maybe using the same type of dynamic benchmarking to establish that trend-based level of service.
So sorry, I just wanted to clarify. So you were saying that the NRPA benchmark level of service that factors in the decline of younger people and the increase of older people that you were referring to earlier. My question is related to whether the Fairfax County factors in the change in the distribution of population in terms of what types of fields we need, because I mean, obviously senior citizens are less likely, for instance, to use a rectangle field or a playground than, you know, a younger resident.
For development, I think that comes with the proper language, right? So a lot of that gets into what type of recreation that area might need or lack, and that gets attached to the type of facility that the developer is then agreeing to provide.
I think what Jonah is trying to ask, the per 2,700, we'll look at rectangle fields for the county, okay? That is the entire population. But it's irrespective of how that population is divided, whether it's 100% people over 70 or 100% people under 20, that number doesn't matter, it's 2,700. So I assume the answer, Jonah, to your question is no. None of these standards take in to
It's blind to any demographic changes.
But that's not necessarily always true, because it's not the same ratio as back when there were 50-50 split. So it's every time it changes every time. So the reason why rectangular fields are 1 per 2,700, which is different than 1 per 2,100 for multi-use courts, does have some factor. I don't know if it's cognizant or is some factor of assuming who's using it. Otherwise, it would be the same across the board for every single thing.
Okay.
So do they?
The other thing I would say is control of that to an extent, correct? So when we go into the comp plan,
Yes.
when we do this, we're going to be the ones who are recommending it. So it should, the question, not shouldn't be, but the question is, this is comparing it to previous. We're going into the process again. What should it look like when we're determining our level of service for the county, for the comp?
The last time the comp plan was updated 20 years ago, 2006. So these need to be changed, and we can recommend the changes as it relates
because
to
the
park.
population.
Yes, the trends have changed, and this is a way to establish a new level of service that has more transparency behind it. Well, how is it constructed? What is that measurement? And what is it tied to? And what ultimately is the Park Authority's responsibility, the portion of to meet that?
Linwood has been waiting.
Yeah. NRPA is not the same as our immediate peers that we had a list of earlier, okay?
That's the national.
Right, that's right, it's national. So I would think this analysis would benefit with a comparison to our peers also, and not just the national average, a column for our peers. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Yeah.
And frankly, also the denseness thing I talked about earlier, that the density is going to drive a lot of decision-making that may not drive it in some other counties because of their ability to get access to land and stuff in a way that makes our decision-making maybe a little different and frankly, more expensive to get land.
Correct. I mean, we are a very built-out urban
Right.
county.
So just try it. So you said that we're the density, I think we need to think about that. In terms of what's up here. One, when you say we're plus 60, is that of the FCPA number or of the combined number?
Of the FCPA.
So,
But we are using the NRPA column for that.
no, previously, and I may have misunderstood. But in previous needs assessments, I thought it was here's the county need. And here's how the parks can fit into that. Not here's what the parks think they need and county separately go figure out what you think you need. In other words, if we think you need parks, it's part of an overall plan of what the county needs.
I think the approach that we used in 16 was that we were meeting our standards, level of service standards. So rather than adjust the level of service standards, we made recommendations for what we should do. So renovate facilities, enhance facilities, rather than build new.
Right, no, I appreciate that, but I guess what I'm asking or trying to ask is when we create this document, is it based on all these different numbers and levels of standard, everything we come up with, what we think the county needs and where we then fit in what that, because, or is somebody else, or are we saying, no, somebody else has to figure out how many soccer fields and how much parks and things, and then we're just telling you where we fit in. In other words, I always thought we were developing, here's the needs assessment for the county of parks and stuff that we need, and here's how we can fit into that.
This is what we think we could fulfill.
Right. So one of the things that I think is important is if we're thinking this through, if we're going to take the approach, here's what the county needs and here's what we think we can fulfill. And county, you can have, other people, other entities, whatever, have to fill the rest. Then we're establishing a county standard. And then if we're setting up a separate standard that says, here's what we, the park authority, think we can meet. Here's the standard that we can live up to, based on funding or whatever else, that's fine. But ultimately, we may be plus 60, but the county may be minus 100. And we have to indicate that someplace.
I think since other public facilities are higher than ours in all of those categories, it's a multi-use course. That we're by ourselves already over, you add the two numbers.
We are
Certainly,
much
it's only gonna get higher.
No, but if it's, here's what the county needs as a whole. And it is 1,000, and that is, maybe it's, 700 playgrounds. I don't know, something more than what those two numbers are.
It wouldn't be based on what we're seeing, but based on the ratio.
But that's, so. Okay, so you're saying the ratio is not a part, that's also for their county, what they've determined.
I would assume so, I don't know.
For their jurisdictions,
Yeah.
yes.
So I think if so all of these are surplus. Let's just say that there's something that's not a surplus. Let's just say that, let's reverse engineer it and say we're talking about,
Skate park.
Skate park.
thank you, because that's, so we have to talk about skate parks. If the need says that the county needs 15 skate parks and we have 4. And so we're not necessarily saying that we're only gonna do 2. We know when we're doing things that there's a surplus. So if we have an opportunity to fill that need ourselves, that's fine. We could take advantage of that opportunity. But we're also saying as part of the comp plan that it can't be just on us.
Right.
Because we're never gonna get to 15. So when we're doing urban parks or proffers or developers coming in, that we're also looking at that when we're telling them what they need to be providing for them, for the community. And so, but we're never gonna say, I don't think, unless it's something that it's not in our mission to do, we would never have a piece of property and say, we think our role is 2 skate parks, and then we get to 2 and then we're done, even though the comp plan is still showing that we have a need. We wouldn't just say that I don't think that there's a way that we can figure out what we would be providing. I think here it's the opposite of there's a surplus. Do you see what I'm saying? I can't see any amenity that we would say we're done if the needs assessment is saying we need more and the comp plan is saying we need more. Now, it's what we can do with the land that we have. We might not have any land in Tyson's to do it. That's a completely different thing. But we would never say we're only gonna provide 2 more, no more racquetball courts for us just because we just think we should be providing 2. I don't think we're gonna get, or at least not in my time. We're not gonna get.
It just seems to me that if we say we need $1 billion worth of new stuff, we know reasonably speaking, the park authority is only gonna be able to provide 200 million, I'm making up numbers, $200 million of that.
Right.
And county, you have to come up with, whether it's proffers, a lot more money for us, whatever, to fill that difference.
Right.
And it's important to help them understand that $800 billion worth, or 800 million, whatever the numbers are, that difference that they need to help us come up with a solution to.
Or other people, or the private sector,
Right, or whatever.
or someplace
I'm
else.
just saying, come up with a creative solution to that
Right.
hole.
Right,
It's
or
important to show the
somebody's
whole.
not pointing to us and saying, Park Authority, you have not provided, your data shows that you have not provided enough skate parks. It's like, no, hi, it's everybody, everybody's in there, we only have 50% of the parkland in the county, everybody's gotta sort of help figure this out ourselves, and by the way, I can't fit all of our needs on 1 4-acre piece of property, decisions have to be,
But we are gonna help illustrate the whole, is what I might think the.
And that's why one of the biggest or important recommendations for both is clarify the responsibilities. I mean, I think that is where a lot of things can be solved.
It allows for more flexibility in how you're approaching redeveloping parks, re-envisioning parks or new parks. Because if you have a facility that has a current deficit in terms of the number of facilities, then there might be pressure of why isn't that being prioritized? Whereas now these measurements are showing you have a surplus in all these categories. So there isn't a particular need, but it opens the opportunity to have more flexibility to provide and be responsive to what the communities are actually desiring locally for their facilities as well.
If,
Also, these don't talk about spatially, right? So this is the net number.
And
It
that's-
doesn't tell you that everywhere it's available or accessible.
You
So
might-
there's that
you might need more
aspect too.
to fulfill
I
that
just-
access.
I'm not in a place where I would say, I'm willing to go with an NRPA benchmark on everything. I don't know why I would by default.
Yeah, this is illustrating an example of how to build a dynamic,
Okay, I'm just,
one that takes into those
Yeah.
years.
yeah, peers and future. Because we're only gonna be more dense in 10 years than
Is
we are
this the
now.
last slide?
A couple more.
So basically,
two.
We're moving.
one big one.
We are supposed to be in the budget committee, so
Okay,
let's carry on.
we'll rush through. I think we
Sure.
can skip.
Well, can we just, I think this is a huge coup. Could you just, I think it's really important to talk about what you guys.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying to rush through the rest of it. I'm just saying we're done with that slide.
Go ahead.
So the last level service discussion is access. And this is in the key measurement to equity. This builds upon the process strategy as well as the One Fairfax goals. And so this starts to, again, identify the prioritization of the Part A opportunity areas in addressing the equity and access needs. At the top here, you'll see a couple of things in the graphics. The 9.7% of the county land mass in terms of acreages within the Park Authority ownership. And then drilling that down in terms of when we look at different modes of travel, 69% of the land areas within a 5-minute drive access to a Park Authority park. And that covers local, county, district-wide, as well as natural resource-based facilities. And then that expands if you see the 10-minute drive to 82.5% of the land mass is within that. But what we're not necessarily as successful in is that walk aspect, that walk mode. And so 54% is within the 10-minute walk. And that's one of the core goals that has been established with the PROSA strategy, is to expand that and to prioritize that. And so establishing sub areas across the county that start to drill down and building that upon those opportunity areas. And so that's what the map on the far left shows, is the green indicates those 10-minute walk sheds from a Park Authority site. And then you see some black hatching areas. Those are the opportunities areas. And you can see that some of that is not overlapping necessarily. Those could be target areas for that. And that may necessitate partnerships, acquisitions, or additional facilities to resolve.
That was the point I was just gonna make. The extent we were talking about sharing responsibility in the other slides, you know, it would equally apply to this.
So
Let's say, just to, because we set this in all of our individual POS meetings, since PROSA has been created, we have been able to increase that 54% by 2%, 2%.
Yes.
So the county, just since PROSA just in the last few years, which is a huge accomplishment for us. And it's not all about acquisitions. It's all about that low hanging fruit of adding in trailheads, adding in trails, adding in parking lots, adding in access to different places. So I just did want to say it is working.
And all these calculations, they're based on population, not just land and proximity.
it's the land mass, So it's not the percentage of the population, it's how much geographical area of the county is within that distance.
So it's not the percentage of population which within a
Correct.
10-minute walk, it's just land.
It could be, the percentage of population on these could be higher if that is. So for example, the local park access could be higher if they're in the more dense areas and serving higher density, higher population areas. That could have a higher percentage of that. So there's a whole series of maps that drive into those different.
Would it be useful though to do it, populations, how many citizens in Fairfax County are we satisfying the desire to have a walk from?
Yeah,
Yes.
no, you're 100% right. I assumed like you did that those was people.
But they're not.
No,
Yeah, because that map, the way it is,
What, are we, like,
that map right there, you know, the southern tip where I live and I know very well.
Yeah.
It would be total waste of time to try to get a 10-minute walk that land mass.
Which is actually one of the things I was thinking about is that I don't know how to, what I'm about to say is a step complicated. But there are parts of the county that having parks within a 5 or 10 minute walk is basically impossible.
Sure, like
It's-
that.
No, right.
like Linwood's house.
But it's, one of the things that might be interesting to try to figure out is how much of the population can be within that? And
That's
what
what I'm
percentage
talking
of
about.
that are we meeting? You know,
That's what I'm talking about.
you know, 'cause we're not gonna be able to meet it.
Question.
because I don't want to sit there and go, oh my goodness, we're at 70%, how do we get to 80? And
That
then
makes-
71% is the max we can ever get
It
to.
may make us look a lot better.
So there's some things that we can do. There's some things that, because really population is done by census area. And so it's really hard when we're talking about a drive set or a walk shed and we're changing stuff up. We can't literally count how many people live in like just by census block. But we can, generally speaking, get an idea of those urban areas and the density of the urban areas and which one, you're absolutely right. We wouldn't necessarily be targeting that in Sully or places like where Linwood lives. But this is the sort of highest and best use. But in those urban areas where we don't, also where we would put in a parking lot, you know, the bigger the parking lot for a park, the more we're assuming that you're driving there because it's not in a more urban area.
If 30% of Fairfax County is in a space that cannot be made accessible to a 5-minute walk, then if 30% can't be that way, then 70%, getting 70% of the county to that spot
Is good.
is
Sure.
total 100% coverage.
I think that what you're getting at and which we can do without telling people like Linwood have access to park.
Well, I guess the
Um,
other side of that
is-
is there's no place in that whole area where you can't walk to a park in 2 minutes.
Yeah, no, right.
But they're not
I
all.
think that I think we should make a goal. And so we could go backwards from that, like what percentage, it's the same thing with the Army base and so like, we're not gonna, they're providing it for themselves, Fort Belvoir. They're providing it themselves. We're not gonna provide a 10-minute walk
Right.
for them. So we'll just kind of cut that out. And we're saying that's not a 10-minute walk to pick on Bill, to every FCPA park in Reston, but they have a walk to an RA park, like they got parks for days in Reston. So how do we sort of separate out sort of the calculations, reverse engineer that to create our goal is to get a 70%
Right.
of the geographic area within a walk to a park. So we get, San Francisco has 100% of people who have a 10-minute walk to a park, but they're also 100% urban.
Right.
Right? They don't have the same, issues. So that could be accomplished.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we set the goal.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
And that's part of that third bullet is establishing the sub areas as well. And that's where that difference in terms of reaching that population percentage versus geographical could be different in terms of those different types of parks. That's kind of what-
Other thing I wanted to clarify real quick is this is access to FCPA parks, not to any all parks. So folks might still have access to some.
To something else.
Yes.
Yep.
So last big slides. And so this highlights a 4 steps for the future approach here. And there's 4 main buckets or goals that we have here. And what you'll see here is in the green represents the goal. And just below that are the different actions that are recommended for those. And so the number 1 is update standards. And those include clarifying, again, the park authority's role in meeting the county standards. It is also focused on an equity-focused tiered level of service framework. So drilling down into that again and clarifying FCPA's role in that. Clarifying natural resource-based lands standards. This is another area where we have the standards for acreage for local and district and countywide, but not for the resource-based lands. Benchmarking our level of service, working in that in terms of whether it's a dynamic or more responsive level of service. Transparency and defensible is the key to that. And updating the classifications to include access-based and resource-based lands as part of those. Number 2 is diversify facilities. This is really built around the trends that we've seen in demographics, as well as that multi-generational facilities. The senior centers is an example of some of those in terms of really bringing together those age-friendly facilities that are flexible for those multiple generations. The small footprints in terms of sports facilities and their options. So for futsal, mini soccer, some of those are, again, innovations that we've seen other jurisdictions really excel at as well. Focusing on trail connectivity, as we mentioned earlier, this has been one of those avenues to enhance access level of service already. Continuing to look at that in terms of a means to enhancing equity through access to the facilities that we already have. Emphasizing flexibility of our facilities to meet those diverse options. So where possible, having those multiple uses or the flexibility built into how a facility standard is now approached with those as they are replaced or newer constructed. And then ultimately develop facility scores that are tied to capital and or equity prioritizations, and developing those to really tie to help to prioritize those reinvestments for capital. Number 3 is addressing the funding gap. This is tied to those previous goals as well. Increasing the staff and maintenance to sustain quality. We heard through a lot of the public engagement that we had in September highlights to quality of what we have is a core priority for our residents. Establishing, again, benchmarks to peers and national medians for those annual reporting of what our expenses are, revenues are. That transparency, again, and how we measure up against our peers and national medians brings that transparency and additional support when needed. And building on regional partnerships, again, for future resource-based opportunities, expanding the profit-based framework, and tying into a tiered subsystem with broader uses of the funds to allow for potential acquisitions, capital investment, operations, and life cycle replacement needs. And continuing to explore the partnerships for sports tourism
I think that's different.
aspects.
I would, if you want to cite that as an example of a partnership, that's fine. I think it's,
It should be partnerships period.
At best, maybe EG.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
but you can't ask me broader than that.
More? You have the last one?
Yes, last one. So number 4 is improve the urban park framework standards. So updating and expanding the framework to include sub areas and for really the context of the future high density areas of the county. Consider experience-based urban park standards. These are these high performance spaces and the spatial needs that are unique to these those lifestyle needs for urban environments. The ability to pool contributions within the urban park framework as well. Identifying those needs on a sub-area basis and allowing that and expanding with clear capital and O&M needs and benchmarks for that. Then ultimately continue to focus on the PARI opportunity areas for those acquisitions and access and equity improvements.
Is O&M operation and maintenance.
Yes, operations and maintenance.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have a proffer question.
I'm sorry.
Nice quick question on proffers.
Okay.
We need a legislative solution on that, right?
Not necessarily.
So proffers have been a conversation that we've been having in every single board individual meeting. Just had a meeting in with CIP and talking about proffers are, I just talked to Torsia about it. We are going to be working through figuring out, we need to, it's all over the board as to how people write them, and some of them are super specific, some of them are not. We really need to be focused on writing those as non-specifically specific as possible, so that we can utilize them for what is needed.
To
at
answer your
the
question
time.
is no.
But I thought Richmond had passed a law. I don't think it was Brookings. I thought Richmond said something about Tyson's was good, but once you got outside of Tyson's.
Still have to
you were
show a
looking more
nexus. I mean,
limited.
they've tightened it than it used to be like a decade ago,
Right,
but it's not,
but there's still
proffers
opportunities.
still exist.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, I knew they existed, but there's still a good opportunity to leverage them for that.
Yep.
Yes, lots.
Not sporadic, but.
Maybe not.
It's built there.
Okay. Thank you again so much for your presentation. Thank you for the question. Any other questions? Please email them to our great people over here. My apologies to the other committees. I think we can adjourn this meeting.
Being that.
No, hold
Wait.
on. Before we move on, there's a couple of housekeeping items because Jose joined.
Okay, sorry.
And I'm going to propose to the board, if they're amenable, dinner is here. Why don't we take 2 minutes, grab it and eat through the next 2 committee meetings, unless people really want to stay here. And so, who knows what.
Good idea. That's why you're involved.
So let me read Jose and we'll grab food and then we'll get back to work. That's my finish. Thank you. All right. Jose, are you connected to this meeting remotely? Can you, will say your name and the location of where you're calling?
Yes, this is Jose Peralta. I'm calling from my home in Sully District.
Great. I move that Jose's voice will be adequately heard from his location.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And that motion carries. Jose, you can now ask questions, but not about the presentation we did. We'll grab dinner. We'll be back in session in a couple of minutes.
Thank you.
I know Jay.
Yeah, no, like,
Session, we'll work in the next few committee meetings while we're eating, but Linwood, you're up next.
Being that it is at least 6:20, I'd like to call the planning. Turning it over to
To Jay,
who?
to Jay.
Jay.
Totally do that. Okay, I'm gonna try to go fast. We want to show this, presentation, this presentation I just gave a few hours ago to the county executive, and is also roughly the same, presentation we're gonna be giving to the planning commission. So we usually do a yearly, presentation to the county executive and one site. So this is again our bond schedule. You see this a lot when we come back to how we're formulating our 2027 bond. We just want to let them know sort of what the the goal is that November 2020, 2020, no. It's 2025. It's fine. No, it's in November 2024. It's fine. We're hoping to finalize the project list by March. Okay, so if you, project again, this is for DMV and the county executive. You all know a lot of these projects, so I'm not going to go into them. Aiken, Ruxell, Norway, we specifically chose some full park projects, some system replacement projects, some taking care of what you have in the trail, and some building. It's just to identify some. This is in no way an exclusive list. Okay, or an inclusive. Okay, so one of the things the big thing, speaking of proffers, because we've been having proper conversations, some of the things that we've been talking about a lot is when we're dealing with the operating budget impact, what I call OBI, or adding on new parks. You saw in our budget requests, we have, I believe it's 1.23 million in OBI.
It's like 1.9.
In a proper request. And so conversations that we've been having with DMV, we also had an OBI meeting this afternoon. One of the things that we are focused on is sort of a schoolhouse rock for the Xers. How a bill becomes a law, how a park becomes a park. So I believe that there's just a misunderstanding in general by the public, by everybody, that everything that we acquire or get is sort of the brainchild of this group and put in the CIP, and we decide that we're going to build it. When in reality, the majority of things that we get are done through different avenues. Well, whether or not it's proffers, whether or not it's other things. So next slide. These are some of the major ways that we would acquire land in the county. We acquire land through donations. We acquire land through acquisitions that we recommend ourselves. We acquire land through proffers and new development. We acquire land through a Board of Supervisors land transfer. Sometimes we request that, and sometimes it's property that has been, sometimes it's proffers and BOS land transfer in one. So the proffer identified it, it's the BOS land in there, planning and transfer. And sometimes because we're an authority and we cannot give land at all, we get not a lot, we get land oftentimes through Section 6F, land replacement processes, or in mitigation for other okay. Again, infrastructure maintenance, we have different ways that we fund that as well. Again, Section 6F, land we can do sometimes through acquisition, sometimes proffers. Same general thing about the percentage. It's not in any ways an equal thing. It's not as if we do the majority and the majority comes through other options. This is a constant sort of cycle of how we get new facilities and new parkland. Okay, so some of the examples of those, I'm not going to do this because we already did this. It's like proffers, eligibility is a good example. Donations, Raglan Road, that was in Hunter Mill. It was African American Cemetery. That's a one-time fee that it costs us to sort of restabilize that area, take down some trees that were overhanging, and generally speaking, clean it up. A developer is Overlook Park, which is that first top photo, which is a landfill. Federal government / county, that was the Laurel Hill acquisition that we got from the federal for the jail. And then BOS transfers, those Scotts Run, actually that's going to stay Scotts Run. Hilltop is going to be one of those. That's going to be a BOS transfer. Next slide. So you guys have seen this already. This is the total request, 1.2 of OBI for 5 parks. You know, we whittled that down. So this is just what we presented to the DMV county executive. I'm not going to be doing this exactly like this for the county, the planning commission, but we will talk about proffers. Okay. Planning, we're going to go through this quick because you just saw it. Go through needs assessment. The next one, you've seen the slide. You've seen the slide. Next slide. You've seen the slide. 2%. Seen the slide. Other studies. Okay, I think we've talked about this before. If those of you who are with us for the community supervisor, we also talked about this historic CIP investment mapping tool. Ferris came to show that to you a while ago. Next slide. We also then hone in on one. This is Mason District that we use for this one. The large circles, when you zoom in, next slide, it breaks up further into individual parks. This one also shows the Part A, Racial Equity Index, for the equity areas. And so when we're looking at parks that we want to do or our playground, for instance, and two things are equal in an area, and if you stack Crossroads interim in the top right in the dark purple, then you might see the bottom left where that big circle is, and it's a function of those two parks. With Crossroads interim hasn't had any investment in the last 10 years, so maybe we want to pop that one up and do that playground before we do the other one. Just had, you know, something done there. Okay. We also then are going to look into conditions assessments. You've seen us present our conditions assessments. We look at courts, A through F, a really good example for courts pickleball, because pickleball is such a newer sport. I think 100% of our pickleball courts that we have right now are rated A or B. That's just a function of the fact that they were newly surfaced in order to provide that amenity. So you might have tennis and other courts that don't have, that are D, C, D, and F. So let's just look at courts. Next slide. And this would be a list of all of the asset condition assessments for athletic courts. It's just a very small pinpoint of a bigger Excel spreadsheet that apparently goes all the way over to the right. But you just look here and then you look at other, sorry, you look here and you see the conditions. You see other things. You take all of that and take the conditions assessments for a specific court or amenity. Then we factor in other factors. We factor in the closest amenity of that type. Is there another park that's right next to it that's just got the playground done and it's sort of around the corner? Well, maybe we don't want to prioritize doing the playground that's 2 blocks away. We want to do a playground someplace else. We want to look at PROSA as to whether or not that amenity will increase our PROSA number. We want to look at the historic CIP mapping tool. We want to look at the level of usage of the amenity. We use Clemmy John Tree in that picture. All playgrounds, everything's unequal. Clemmy gets hammered just because of the amount of people that are using it, as opposed to another playground that might not get the highest amount of use. And the carrying capacity. How many people are going to be attending that? Is there opportunities to partner with communities? There are alternative funding sources that we can use. Again, with the proffers, the highest and best use of the money that we have. The map of the county distribution, is there ADA accessibility things that we can group into that to increase our accessibility to that particular amenity. Okay. Put that all together into the big funnel, and then that kind of pops out both our CIP strategy and our work plan. Next slide, we can talk about work plan. Okay, so we take all that together, and then here would be an example of a court repair prioritization. And so if you look at this just to see how we would prioritize things, you might see some Fs. If you just look at the conditions that might be above or below some Ds. And it's, why is that? It's because we factored in everything else we just said to figure out where in geographic parity to figure out which one goes next. So an example is Fort Hunt. That's an F. That's kind of towards the bottom. It's a low utilized facility, as opposed to something that's higher up. Jefferson 1 through 6, Jefferson District Park. Those courts are utilized all the time. They're high utilization. So it's a D over the F. So that's kind of how we put everything in and determine whether the priority list, and that becomes our work plan. Sorry, go back. Within that work plan, once we separate out those buckets into how much we want to what level of effort we want to put into courts in a year, we then can take that work plan, calculate how much that estimate cost of net repair, add it up, and if we have $350,000 that year, we can put a line and say these for this year, this for next year, so that Walter Alcorn calls and says that that's not his thing. But when is Navyville going to happen? Count down, count down, count down. This will happen in 7 years from now, unless we then want to look at that with other lists of other amenities, and then be able to prioritize within that district what we want to do. Maybe we can use proffers. Maybe we can use other aspects. Maybe we want to get a developer to do it, to try to move those projects up.
Maybe the board of supervisors will decide to better fund it.
Correct. But what we want to do with this list, yes. What we want to do with this list, though, is sort of be able to look at, we all know the question comes in, hey, if I give you this much money, can we do X project? Sure we can, but what we want to do is we want to do the next project on this list, because that's the next priority. And if we get out of that list and just do sort of these pet projects, we're never going to get to the actual work plan priority list that actually moves the needle. Next slide. I'm gonna try. Josh here? I'm gonna try. Just don't laugh. Okay, great. This is the, cash flow slide for the whole county. It's a little bit dated. The next slide is probably the most important. Well, no, keep it here. You look at all of these, different groups that have CIP and cash flow. Most of them have a little bit like public safety. Their number goes up and down and up and down. Parks, our number is the same. Our cash flow is the same across the board. They put us in for, I think, $30 million for the next thing. Next slide. So we're talking to DMV about, and this is not necessarily going to be in the planning commission either, but what we're talking to DMV about is when at $30 million a year, the rubber is going to meet the road when we go to, I'll do more in FY 28. That's going to pop out our need for cash is going to pop out to about $47 million. That's above the $30 million cash flow. This is, we're right now at the exact same point. I'm sure nobody remembers this. The exact same point of the same issue with Mount Vernon, where we had to determine whether or not we were going to do the roof and go back, and then we had to use ARPA funds because we did not have the cash flow. We had the CIP capacity, we did not have the cash flow to pay for it. So ARPA funds aren't available anymore, so we really need to see in the equivalent of that slide before in the future how our cash flow is going to be increasing, and if it increases without the whole capacity for the county increasing, and I'm not saying that it ever is, nobody's told me that, the assumption then would be, unless we're super lucky, that are they gonna pop us down in one of those out years because the money has to go, it's a balloon, right? There's a whole capacity for the county. We get more than what's allocated out, then somebody has to either get left, which means that maybe, I don't know. So we're in conversation to make sure that we're not in the same situation with Mount Vernon prior to signing anything that that have us going forward with Ojimoro. Next slide. The last thing we talked about in the CIP were cost consideration. I don't believe that we've spoken about this in board, but it's one of the things that we've been talking about for a long time. Things are very expensive, and we all know that's very expensive. When we do Ojimoro, it's about a $110 million project we're estimating right now. Mount Vernon was 75 million. If you compare those two facilities together, there's going to be no comparison between the two. Ojimoro is a replacement in kind as designed right now. It's not going to have the 2-story and the rock wall, and it's not going to have 2 sheets of ice. It's not going to look like it costs $20 million. Which could be a factor of the market, could be a factor of where we are. We do know that there are buildings in other places that cost less per square foot to do, whether or not it's the requirements the county puts on, whatever it is. I think that it's a good idea. DPWS is starting to look at it. We think it's a really good idea for the county to do some sort of a study or something that looks at the cost per square foot of our projects, if only so that everybody's level set. So that when they come in, it's not a matter of why you do more that expensive, because we looked at this and this is how much it costs to do X, and this is how much it costs to do Y. And that's across the board with schools, with us, DPWS, we're all cut in that respect. And maybe there's a way that we can get some costs down by doing small little things, or I don't know what it is. We're all looking into it, but this is something that we're all very focused on. And with no finger pointing, it's not DPWS's fault. It's not anybody. It's something.
We've talked to DPWS.
We've talked to DPWS. They're starting the process of looking into that. I've mentioned it to schools. It might be one of the conversations that's going to be had during the joint task force for facilities. Yes, facilities. The joint task force for facilities. They have a meeting on the third. We have a meeting. The first meeting on the 31st.
Do you think any of those other agencies would be willing to do something? Like
Yes.
this, just take their cost?
Yes. We're all, I mean, this is in no, it's one of the rare, not that we don't, it's one of the rare times where everybody's like nodding their heads, like it
Well,
would be great.
I only ask because there's more agencies facing the same problem. It's likely that where supervisors might actually.
Yeah, well, those are the 3 entities. I just named all of the, DPWS does all of the other building, us and schools. So
Okay.
those are the only 3. So they're talking about all of the property, of being able to get a handle on that. So I think that's it.
Seeing no question.
Yep.
The
Got my phone
planning
number.
and development
Tim?
On the budget committee people order. And my husband is Josh Coleman and yes. So I have on the agenda 3 items. First is information and the second 2 are action. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, we'll hop right in. Katie's gonna take us through.
So information item number 1, so this is the FY 27 budget submission for the bond. You saw this before when we reviewed carryover, so you've seen the FY 25 budget, FY 25 actuals. This is just representing as we're going to submit this for the FY 27 budget submission.
I do have a question about this. I understand it's. I thought at some point we were told that we were gonna spend all of the 16 and 20 bond before the 26 started. It did not seem to be showing that.
Some of the 16 and 20 bond is money towards Audrey Moore.
Okay.
First thing. Now, the majority of the money left is simply Audrey Moore money.
Okay.
There may be as we clean up and work through project timelines and whatever, but the vast majority of anything left from 16 and 20 would be Audrey Moore dollars. That would hit immediately. They're going to be used over the next 2 years as well, but there's still a lot of money that would go towards the actual construction starting.
Yeah, so we are gonna do the thing where we'll zero out those. We'll zero out everything not Audrey Moore related before the 26 bond starts, so we clean up.
The goal to get through as much as we possibly
Sure.
can.
Okay, and that's still looking realistic.
I think generally, I mean, project timelines, I can't, you know.
Yeah, no, I'm more asking from, the county isn't changing what they're allowing us. Okay.
Now, our cash flow is expected to go up to 30 million next year, in line with spending down as much more bond dollars outside the Audrey Moore remaining.
Got it. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Next is the action item. So this is the FY 27 budget submission for the Park Improvement Fund. So again, this was the same as we presented before. So the FY 25 budget and actuals same as carryover. So you can see in the FY 26 revised budget, there's a 2.9 million transfer in from the revenue fund. So giving us a total available of 42.8 million for FY 26. The 1.5 for ECL is always left in reserve. So that's what you see in the FY 27 budget where everything's zeroed out except for that.
For new board members and board members who don't remember, you did do 30 seconds on what the Lawrence Trust Reserve is. I know it's attached to EC Lawrence, but beyond that. I don't know if I'm the best.
So the original owners of the property left this trust to the park authority to only be used for expenses related to the park. And so over the years, we tapped the interest earned, not the principal.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions on this? Consensus to move this forward? Yes.
Yes.
Next item.
So next thing is our proposed fees.
I'm just going to jump in for a minute, just for the first time for some of you through this process. This meeting tonight and this agenda item is the permission or approval to advertise the proposed fees. We're not voting on moving anything forward. This is the start of the process. We'll take you through some background slides, but just so everybody's clear on that, this is kind of kicking off the process for the next month and a half here as we then move through our fee process.
So the fee timeline, so we're here at the October meeting to advertise and then start that public comment period. And then we will come back in December at the December 10th meeting will be where we have the review and then final approval of the fee package. And then you can see here, so January is when they'll take effect. And then adding on that there is the Board of Supervisors, where the county exec presents his advertised budget in February, and then the Board of Supervisors actions in case anything needs to be adjusted there, and then the new fiscal year in July.
And there's the opportunity for public comment at the December 10th.
There will be a public comment period. There's not a public comment meeting. Is that your question?
It was open in 30 days.
Open for 30 days. We will recap all of the public, you'll get a copy of every comment that's received. We'll recap it at the December meeting in advance.
So these are the dates. So tonight is for the authorization of the advertisement of the fee proposal. The 30-day comment period will start on October 30th and will run through November 26th, which is that day before Thanksgiving. So that's the public comment period. And then on the 10th, when we come back, you will see all of the comments that we received. We'll provide a summary of that, and then that will be the meeting for approval. And then the fee adjustments that take effect there on January 1st. And then there's always the possibility of, depending on what happens with the budget. So we always leave this on here as an, if needed for the May board meeting, and then the fiscal year starts again in July.
Just for back, we have not had to do that. We do try to estimate as best we can what is expected to come in the next year's fiscal year budget. We've not had to come back for that. It's just leaving it open if something unexpected was to be put into the budget that would impact the revenue fund. Be an additional opportunity for us to look at fees.
Josh, related to that, I don't know, 2 years ago now, 3 years ago, we changed the timing of this. That made a difference. It helps, not mattered at all.
I think it's helped from an implementation standpoint in terms of just a little bit of ease for customers that January 1st is the day that fees go into effect. I think it's helped clean up our planning a little bit of, it's not just 2 or 3 months left in a fiscal year. It's how that helps budgeting generally. So it's still not great, I would say, in terms of we operate on a fiscal year and we do a calendar year fee schedule in terms of the budget impact over 2 fiscal years, a half on each side. But I think it's the best kind of splitting the difference between how we best serve customers and the impacts there and get a little bit better and clearer budget picture while leaving that flexibility.
Okay, good deal. Thank you.
Any other questions?
We'll try to go quick. We do have some
Yes.
background slides, but we'll roll through it here.
So this is, again, just pointing out that we use a balanced approach to generate revenue. So it's not just fee adjustments, cost management, new facilities, and program growth, as well as the fee adjustments. So how do we develop these fee adjustments? So we establish the net goals that we need depending on what sort of obligations we have and what needs for deferred maintenance and things like that. We project out our expenses so we know how much expenses that we anticipate are coming. And then from there, what sort of revenue do we need to generate to meet those net goals? So our overall outlook is FCPA, we target 2 to 3 million in annual net revenue. So we expect that expenses will grow, continue to grow, and the revenue trends remain positive, but we do depend on certain lines of business, and that can be at risk. So rec centers and golf are really our 2 that are in high demand. So our major lines of business, so rec center memberships being one, have shown sustained and promising growth throughout FY25, and we're seeing that continue into the start of FY26. And then rounds of golf have also remained steady throughout FY25. So our compensation increases are really what's significantly impacting our bottom line. Our expenses, so compensation, so salary and benefits were 2.8 million higher than they were in FY24, which was our reported high. So this trend is expected to continue. So salary and benefits, so for salary, that means MRA, performance, bonuses, all of those things will continue to have a significant impact. So those salary increases remain a primary driver of the fee increases. They really drive our expenses up. Yes.
Board members, and if anyone listening doesn't know or doesn't remember, all Park Authority employees are county employees. So the board of supervisors raises salaries, it raises across everything. So our general fund employees are covered in the county's budget when salary increases are made. They are not covered on the revenue fund, so they're responsible for the difference.
I would also add, from a benefit standpoint, if the county tweaks or changes anything related to how they cover benefits, the revenue fund absorbs that. So we've seen over the last several years changes to the retirement calculation, for instance, and obligations that the county has. That has an impact on our retirement costs every year. So Will, as we come back in Q1, you start to look at some numbers generally, you'll see those benefit numbers and the impact that they continue to have on us. It plays into this conversation for sure.
So net revenue, we can't keep pace with the expenses as they grow without raising fees. So we do have the programmatic fee increase that was approved by our director, but that's not enough. We do have to raise other fees. So our revenue fund net goals are to continually increase our sinking fund to address those significant expenses there, and deferred maintenance costs for revenue funded facilities. We also want to maintain our revenue stabilization reserve in the revenue fund and also address deferred revenue impacts. So we need to plan for increased expenses. So MRA is going to continue to be there, operational expense increases, and then capital expenses. Okay, this is a review of the deferred maintenance costs, which I know you've seen before. So the total deferral as of right now is 201. Of that, nearly 71 million is just rec centers and golf. And assessments have been completed recently, so that number will be higher than the 71 million. Okay, so this is a baseline FY27 revenue and operating fund assumption. So we're assuming just 2% natural growth in revenue. That would get us 1.3 million in revenue, 2% increase in operating expenses. So that's the negative 400,000. And then if we assume 4% for merit, so 2% MRA plus performance, and then 2% for non-merit, that would be an increase of an additional 900,000 in expenses. Increasing in benefits would be another $1 million there. So our net revenue without changing any of our fees would be a net negative of $1 million. All right, so revenue fund management, we're influenced by several factors. So of course, weather is always a factor, especially for places like Watermine and golf. And in peak season, we can lose $80,000 in a day right there if both of those have to shut down because of rain. Also market factors where we talked about with the needs assessment, right now golf is hot, so we're making a lot of money there. That could change, the market could change. So that would affect our revenue. And then of course, there's always the economic reality of what is happening in the economy nationally, but also here in the DC metro region. So our fee package focus areas for rec centers, there's membership fee increases as well as gymnasium and racquetball court rental increases. As with last year, the picnic shelters and canopies, so there's an increase in fees there, along with adding some more 2-hour time slots. For golf, continuation of the maximum rate strategy. There's Laurel Hill membership increases and then the power cart rental increases. And for resource management, facility rental increases and garden spot. Okay, just a quick overview for rec centers. So we're gradually increasing the membership fees to be based on market rates. Now this graph shows the impact of deferred revenue. So if we remove deferred revenue from this, rec centers are netting approximately 2 million a year, but because of deferred revenue for the memberships and then camps, that really does hit rec centers hard, which is why we see here, close to breaking even, but they are negative because of the increasing expenses and then the impact of the deferred revenue.
So I just want to emphasize that too. Prior to a number of years ago with the audit finding, we've seen rec centers be net positive about $3 million, right? This is the impact of when camps have to be deferred to the next fiscal year of rec centers are less profitable on our books today than they were years ago, which is a continued impact as well. We're at about 52.5% of what we need to be at long-term for our deferred revenue. So every time we make a net, we also look at, just like we did this last year, building up that deferred reserve towards our requirement.
They're not less profitable, they're less profitable in a given fiscal year.
Correct, yes.
So for
That'll go
golf,
away at some point in time, like we're working towards, right? We're
We get
working
to
towards
100%.
equilibrium, Right.
I mean, we'll still have an impact every single year because as fees go up or as a program area grows, we defer more revenue. So it is a long-term challenge, but yes, it'll go away in terms of the major impacts we're seeing year over year right now as we try to figure that out.
so an overview for golf, the rounds of golf continue to sustain momentum. So especially during April to October, when the weather is generally more predictable. The surges in play over the last 5 years seem to suggest that that's the new normal for traditional golf participation and then also driving range use. So new technologies we've been using is also making it easier for golfers to identify and book available tee times. And then off-course spending, so for food and beverage and retail, has also been trending upwards. So these graphs show, and again, this is with the deferred revenue included. So golf netted over $4 million because so much of their revenue is at that time, you make the money, you can collect the money. There is some membership that does get deferred. Whereas for FY 25 overall net with the impact of the deferred revenue is so much left because so much more of it got deferred.
We're also in the process of paying off some debt. On the golf, sorry, the question.
Yeah, the Laurel Hill debt,
Yes.
we continue to pay every year. I think it's about $1 million, just under $1 million. How many?
Yeah, it's 900.
Yeah, we're, I mean, my point is we're
2033, I think, is the year
Yes.
that comes off. So,
Yes.
so still a little bit. It was nice when the Twin Lakes came off a number of years ago, so that was a big help in that fiscal year.
So then for resource management, the focus is on increasing the revenue from the rental business through, standardizing the prime and non-prime rates, benchmarking for comparable facilities, also accounting for all the improvements that are done of the assets that when rates need to increase there, and then removing of fees that are no longer available. So that's a chart again showing just RMI by itself, the net revenue for them, about 1.7. Okay, so overall, the revenue impact of the fee package is just under 1.3 million. That of course is for the whole calendar year, so half in FY 26 and about half in FY 27. So you can see the impact of that. So the revenue that is in both of these for FY 26 and 27 does already include the programmatic fee package. So that is slightly higher than what we presented at the last meeting. So that is already included there. So you can see the additional net revenue line item in there and then the expenditures for each year. So net revenue for FY 26 without the fee proposal is 1.1 million. With the fee proposal is 1.8. And then for FY 27, the net revenue without is 105,000. And then the estimated net revenue with the fee increases is 700,000.
I want to emphasize, a lot of our revenue projections are conservative projections by, design. When we come back with the Q1 report out, we'll show you where we're at through Q1, which is a positive start to this fiscal year, even as we look at the increase packages. But part of the additional growth that we're obviously hoping for in this fiscal year is with Mount Vernon opening, that we're bringing a better net return on from that facility as well, which plays into that chart you saw at the beginning of the 4 different buckets in which revenue growth can come in, being new facilities being one.
Question. Recommendation to advertise the.
I do have a few specific questions. Do you guys have the narrative in front of you?
Yeah.
Okay. So the rec center discount factor. There's a line in there that says staff proposed to bring the adult 19+ rates in line with the daily facility admission and time-based memberships. I'm not 100% sure what that means, but I want to make is that same ratio, I suppose, true of the senior citizen fast pass rate?
I'm sorry, I don't know if I fully follow. I'm just finding.
Well, and it could be because I don't know what that line means too. So let's do this first. What is meant by staff proposed to bring the adult 19+ rates in line with the daily facility admission and time-based memberships? That's a line right from the narrative.
Yeah, I believe that's indicating that I think from changing admission fees over the years, we have not kept up with the discount fast pass in line with the admission fee. So typically our structure, our most discounted rate would be tied to purchasing like an annual membership, that you're buying an annual membership and people visiting more frequently. Next tier down would be Or the next tier up would be the discount fast pass. You take our admission times 25, but you're getting a significant discount off of that. And then admission tends to be the highest per visit rate that we would calculate. I believe through increasing the admission fees, but not keeping up with DFP, that's what that line is intended to say. We're trying to get this back into the space that it needs to be after tweaking membership fees and admission fees, but not touching the DFP for it.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought. So there, and maybe, and I don't remember, I'm not looking at it right now. Is there a daily rate for senior citizens?
There is.
Okay. Are we keeping their fast pass in line with changes that we're making?
Discount wise, it's consistent with the admission.
So the reason that you're not looking to increase theirs in this category is because we have in the past?
The out of county
Yeah.
fee. The out of county fee historically has been, youth and student senior. There hasn't been a youth or student discount associated with that. If you look at the current fee
Okay.
there, it's keeping them at the 275 even as we raise it up. So it is giving a senior and youth discount essentially to an out of county folk, even the out of county person, even though they'll pay a much higher rate than the in county.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yep, and I think it answers my questions here. All right, then moving on to the annual memberships. These are most of those real world. Explain to me how this works in practice. In the multi-use, in the multi-household category, there was one that said you could have a youth multi-household. And I'm just not sure how that works in practice.
How a youth multi-household.
Yeah, because I think there was, again, I'm not looking at it right now. These are things I wrote down last night. But there was a senior and a youth. You have it in front of you?
Yeah, so I think in practice, we haven't sold too many two-person youth
Yeah.
passes. Is that what you're asking?
basically.
Yeah. So it would be hypothetically, if two 17-year-olds were purchasing a membership. I don't know if we have a single youth membership. In
Okay.
practice, we see adult youth, senior youth. Those are
Right.
more the combinations that we would see. This one is more of a senior.
Senior.
That's really where we see the
Okay.
utilization. There are
And
the
then
senior two-person.
Related to that, there's only, the discount appears to only go to seniors at 1 or 2 households. So what happens if 3 seniors want a multi-household one? Do they go to the normal rate or we just, okay, correct. Then we go into the household. And I guess this is a similar question. I imagine there's really no youth 1 or 2 households in practice, or is that like parents buy for their kids and not for themselves?
There are examples of parents buying for their kids and not for themselves. So
Okay.
we do have a very small market of youth who have a membership.
All right, water mine. Again, I'm at a bit of a disadvantage because I didn't have the narrative with me, but I have a note in here to myself. Can you explain the changes? I don't remember what they are.
So I think the biggest change really is with the group rate,
Thank you.
introducing,
I just lost him. Sorry.
introducing an out of county and in county
Yeah.
split for the group rate, where in previous years, there has not been an out of county or in county split. So for out of county groups that would come in previously, they would have been charged the same as an in county group. This is introducing on the group rate, which is 20 or more,
Yeah,
that there's an out of county different rate than the in county.
okay, that makes sense. The permits. Talk about the photography fee. I think this is an artifact from last year, because I think we raised it last year, and then the table doesn't have a specific. I want to confirm that that's accurate.
That is, yeah, that should be removed.
Okay. Okay. Kayaks at Brook Lake, we're eliminating the fee. Are we not doing kayaks at Brook Lake anymore? Are we gonna leave them and,
Fishing kayaks at Brook Lake any longer, we have rowboats.
okay, so kayaks are going entirely.
You're not, the water is not owned by us, so you.
Right, you're not supposed to.
Fishing.
It's a state lake, but a county park.
Correct, which is bizarre. And then the only other one, Mike, I'll give you. The miniature golf, and you're not gonna have an answer now, I don't need it now, I just wanted before we actually vote on this. We raised the youth fee for participating in miniature golf. Whatever, I think it's like a buck or something like that. If we didn't do that, how much revenue does that cost us?
We can come back with what the estimate would be.
All I needed is before we go. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Are you gonna propose to not?
You had a chart
Think-
show these, I think it was, you had the chart that shows how much money we need to make with a couple of bars. The $1 million and the negatives,
Oh, without fees.
this one. So this is mostly made up by personnel. It's salary and benefits.
Yes.
One of the things that I'm wondering about is long-term, especially given our conversation we were having with construction projects being more expensive and all that kind of stuff. We are going to have increasing pressure on the non-personnel cost of just operating everything. Right? But are we not experiencing that? Because we're experiencing such significant increases in the cost of building us. And it seems like other places in the world where it's more expensive to operate as something. And here we seem to be saying that most of the issue we have to address is personnel and not the maintaining and operating the something.
Yeah, I mean, there's still 400K in here, a 2% increase. That's our estimate for that fiscal year. It does go up depending on, what we might be bringing.
So we think
online
that'll cover that bucket of thing.
for that fiscal year. Yes, I think long-term, what you're getting at probably a little bit is as facilities like a Mount Vernon change and turnover, what expenses do we start to experience keeping and maintaining new systems that are much more expensive to operate and to maintain and require a different level of service potentially than we were able to provide previously? What would be the long-term operational impact to that? I think some of that is to be determined as we get into some of those facilities turning over. This is also an area where this is part of the management overall of the revenue fund. How can we, as cheaply as possible, keep our facilities operating, but without maybe spending as we should, and that's where probably that deferred maintenance number continues to creep up over time. We are running under, a lot of times really strict requirements of what can we spend and what can we buy in any given fiscal year. And so that number being at 2%, I would not say is what we need to do. I would say it's what we're forced to do. And so it should be much higher if we were able to spend what we need to in order to maintain those facilities.
And part of the strategy too is to hold expenses through the fiscal year and then get to the end of the year where you saw the 2.9 transfer to Park Improvement Fund. And then we're making the capital investments in the facilities at that time.
Thank you.
Questions? Yes, sir.
I would, looking through the picnic shelter, and I noticed there's $10-15 increase. I come to Hidden Pond here, and then I notice it goes from 50 to 75, and with shelter it is up to 150. There a reason why there's a threefold increase?
Yeah, I believe Hidden Pond had not been adjusted in quite a long time. This is also a proposed change, I believe, in us getting a lot more inquiries and not reserving historically. We benchmarked it against, I believe, if I'm remembering the correct one, and Laura jump in, Burke Lake Park as the equivalent facility. And so the fees proposed here are matching what we charge at Burke Lake. So yes, it is a big increase. I would say it's a price that is lower today than it should be as we look at our
And
equivalent
we invested in
facility.
the facility.
What's that?
We did the parking. We made it easier to come and do things. We made that turnaround. Then we did that. Yeah, we did some of those different things and we theoretically are drawing more people in.
Josh, sorry. I just whispered to Kyle that instead of at the next one, in case he wants it before, so that if you need to adjust something, we can come back. He might not like the, what if they, I'm just guessing.
I whispered.
Any other questions?
Totally listen.
Is there consensus to move this advertising, the fee adjustments? Yes.
Yes.
Last item?
Good deal. 10:30, we'll go right into our meeting.
Yes, it is.
Andy, do we have any speakers this evening?
Public Information Officer, Andy Grable. No, we have no request for public comment.
Thanks, sir. All right, administrative items. Admin 1 is the recommended adoption of the minutes of the October 8th, 2025 Park Authority Board meeting.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Admin number 2. Actually, before I do this, I want to make 2 notes on admin number 2. Look at your schedule. This is the schedule. There's an August meeting built in at the outset because we're anticipating going through the budget cut exercise again. If that ends up not materializing, that meeting will be removed. The second thing is that April 8th meeting, I don't think it specifies it particularly, but it is an EQAC only meeting. So a joint meeting with EQAC, and that's all that it is. It is not a meeting, a normal part of the meeting. So that out of the way. Administrative item number 2 is the recommended adoption of the board meeting schedule for January to December 2026.
So moved.
And a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Countywide action item number 1 is the recommended approval of the FY 2027 Park Improvement Fund, which is Fund 80300, budget submission.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Countywide action item number 2 is the recommended approval to advertise proposed fee changes from October 30th, 2025 to November 27th, 2025.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? That motion carries. 3 info items tonight. Information 1 is the Park Development Division Quarterly Project Status Report. Information 2 is the Master Plan, Strategic Plan and Needs Assessment, Timeline Overview and Strategic Plan Update. And information 3 is the FY 2025 Carryover Update. All of these were presented to and reviewed by the Park Authority Board during committee meetings held on October 8th, 2025. Chairman's matters. We have I think, Allison, you've invited everyone to this, but if not, it will be coming soon. There's a joint meeting with the Board of Supervisors set for December 16th at 1:30 p.m. at the Government Center. So make sure you're checking the email that Allison uses for you for the Park Authority, because like I said, I think it went out already, but if not, I'm sure it should come shortly. Speaking of the Board of Supervisors, after tomorrow, we have Supervisor Alcorn. After tomorrow, we will have met with all of them to let them know the budget reductions and requests that you proposed or submitted to the county. I think those meetings have been largely good. Some interesting questions have been asked. They've gone off on some interesting tangents. But they've been good, productive discussions by and large. And thank you. We've had really good board member participation in those. So thank you, everyone. The last thing, this is a request for information. Torsia, that last slide in the needs assessment presentation, I understand they were Kimley Horn's recommendations. So that's when you guys come back the next time, or maybe even less formal than that, and just an email memo. I'm curious what our own staff thinks of their recommendations. So if you could just, provide some kind of response to that. Agree with them. I assume we probably agree with them.
For the most part, we agree, but we have to have kind of a formal internal discussion. This was
Yep.
on a very tight deadline to deliver to you all. And now we'll go back, revise internally, discuss. And
But I'm curious what our own staff's thoughts are on them, or if there are other things in addition. So whether that's the next time you present on that topic, guys, I know you said you're coming back, or if it makes more sense in a written format, that's up to you, but I'm curious what we think.
Cool, while that's coming up, I just, highlight the win things, for us, so. I love winning. We just won for Spring Hill Rec Center, the 2025 Virginia Energy Efficiency Leadership Award. So here's the ooh and ah of the certificate. And here's the, there we go. And here's the ooh and ah of the, what do we call this? The set of plaque. What is this? It's a glass.
Nice award.
award thing that will be when we're finished with the boardroom up in the boardroom. So just to show that, okay. Matters. We had Centerville Day on October the 18th. It was very well attended by a whole lot of people. I welcomed everybody to the park at, we had the Sears House open, Mount Gilead. We had the Wonder Wagon that was there. We had Eleanor C. Lawrence was there. Our community outreach folks were there. I feel like I'm missing one table. Kathy Smith, County Executive Brian Hill was also in attendance. Congressman Walkinshaw and Congressman, I'm gonna mess up his name. The other one. Okay.
There's like
Sorry.
400 other ones.
Could you just let me roll with it? Thank you. I'm already embarrassed that I couldn't get it out in the first place. Okay, next slide. Thank you for very much for that. We very much appreciate that Congressman's so upcoming events, again, as you can see in the short Director's Matters, it's getting colder. And so the amount of events are going down. Tomorrow we have the Employee Smackdown Golf Tournament at Twin Lakes. It's an annual event. On Monday, there's a resident curator program public meeting for Leahy Lost Valley. On Saturday, the 15th, we're having the Mount Vernon Rec Center grand reopening and celebration. It's been open for a while. And then the farmers markets are still open in East District. Again, here are the closing dates. Kingston closes on Friday. Wakefield and Oakmont, I'm trying to do the dates. And Oakmont closed next week. So does Andale, Herndon, and McLean. When does Reston close? November. Okay, so that's going to be up until November. And is that it? Next slide. That's it.
All right. Let's start online. Dr. Carter, do you have anything for us this evening?
I do not.
All right, thank you. Jose?
Nope, I do not.
Jonah?
Just a thank you to staff for the epic wrap up to the needs assessment. Really appreciate all that detail and all the hard work that went into it. And that's it.
You, Mike? Bill? Rick? Linwood?
Yes.
Yes. Jim?
I do actually. Thanks to staff for the great Salona community meeting a week or two ago, and also to Laura Grape and Nicole Mitchell for last night's presentation to GFCA on the proposed observatory park fields. One other thing, or things here related to the Park Foundation. You see in your mail two items. One is a Legacy Circle brochure. Legacy Circle is using the opportunity in your estate documents as a donor advised fund advisor to give money or to designate money for the benefit of the Park Foundation. Doesn't go into an endowment necessarily. It doesn't go into a general fund. You may specify how you want that Legacy Circle item to be used. Or you could just say we're the greatest good or for the funds. So think about that, talk to your estate planners, things of that nature. And Leslie and I are part of this. I know Maggie and Steve were, and maybe others, so recommend that. Second thing is a letter that's going out to the foundation mailing list. This is a specific request for funding for essential operations. As you know, part of our budget reductions are to for the Park Foundation staff to raise the funds, pay their own way, so to speak, in addition to raising funds for the park authorities benefit. So this is that request again. We have helped out specifically there, and it will enable the Park Foundation to, through this special appeal, to hopefully raise the funds they need to fully fund their operations so that they won't be in the position of having to, say, assess an administrative fee or impose a surcharge on the otherwise generous gifts that friends groups and donors and corporations give to them. Again, for thanks. So that is it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim. And now we are adjourned.
8 o'clock exactly.
You guys in a couple weeks.
All right.